Inside Arthur Andersen's Houston office, a shredder has been running almost without a break for nearly 2 weeks. Andersen is one of the 5 largest accounting firms in the world, and this is not how it spends a normal October. One manager will later describe the volume of paper moving through it with a single word: abnormal. The accountants feed in truck after truck. When it's over, the government will weigh what's gone and land near 2 tons. Down the hall, almost 30,000 computer files quietly vanish. Every page belongs to one client, the 7th largest company in America, a company that on paper can do no wrong. Then on the morning of November 9th, it stops. A federal subpoena, a legal order to hand over its records, had landed the night before. The secretary types a 1-line email investigators will read aloud in court for years. Per Dave, no more shredding. So here's the question hanging in the air. If Enron was the most admired company in America, why were its own accountants working overtime to make the evidence disappear? To understand what was in those trunks, leave the glass towers and drive north out of Houston to a town called Conroe. That's where Charles Prestwood lived. He spent 33 years in the natural gas business and done everything a person is supposed to do. He worked, he saved. By the year 2000, his retirement account, nearly all of it Enron stock, was worth about $1.25 million. When the dust settled, he had a little under $8,000 left. And he was far from alone. Enron had urged its workers to load their savings with company stock, and most had. Then, as the stock slid that fall, the company briefly froze those retirement accounts, and employees could only watch the number drop. The day after the bankruptcy, about 4,500 people at headquarters lost their jobs. Severance was the same for nearly everyone, whatever they'd given the place. $4,500, 3 weeks before Christmas. Now, over the 3 years all of this was building, 29 of Enron's executives and directors had been quietly selling their own shares. Not for $4,500, for $1.1 billion. And here's the detail that should stay with you. None of this was a secret guarded by a genius. A full year before the shredders, an investor at a desk in New York read Enron's annual report, the financial summary every public company puts out each year, and found the whole illusion hiding inside a single number. He tried to warn people. Almost no one listened. We'll come back to him. But first, how do you fake being one of the most profitable companies on earth? Every magic trick needs a method, and Enron's was a way of keeping score. In 1992, the company asked federal regulators to let it use an accounting style called mark-to-market. They didn't object. On its own, it's perfectly respectable. Banks use it to value the things they buy and sell. But Enron aimed it at something banks never would: the future. Picture it. Enron signs a deal meant to pay off over 20 years. Under mark-to-market, it doesn't wait 20 years or even 1. It estimates everything that deal might ever earn and books all of that profit today on a contract that hasn't paid a single cent. If the estimate is honest, that's aggressive. If it's really a wish, you've built yourself a money printing machine. Now here's what that looked like. In 2000, Enron and Blockbuster announced a deal to stream movies into people's living rooms, years before Netflix made that ordinary. A visionary idea with one problem: the technology barely worked, and the deal fell apart within months, earning in total nothing. Enron had already booked $111 million of profit on it. So, what do you do when the numbers don't match the story you keep telling Wall Street? If you're Enron in 1998, you build a set. Before a visit from stock analysts, the company dressed up an entire floor of its Houston tower to look like a trading war room. Monitors, ringing phones, the hum of a business at full speed. Employees were brought in and told to look busy. Some were typing on computers connected to nothing at all. One man who worked there called it Enron's Potemkin Village, a fake front built purely to impress. Hold on to that image, we'll need it again at the end. But a fake floor and generous accounting only carry you so far, because invented profits don't pay real bills. Behind the curtain, Enron was bleeding cash and piling up enormous debt. And debt, unlike profit, is hard to imagine away, unless you have somewhere to put it where no one will look. That was the specialty of Andrew Fastow, that's Enron's chief financial officer, and it turned out, its most inventive mind. Fastow built a hidden web of side companies with names that meant nothing in particular: Chewco, LJM, the Raptors. On paper, independent businesses. In reality, closets, places to stuff Enron's debt so it stayed out of the family photo. The rules allowed it. If outsiders chipped in just 3% of the money, Enron could leave the whole thing off its official books. The records investors actually see, hiding billions in debt from the people who owned the company. The Raptors were the most elegant and the most doomed. They were meant to work like insurance, protection if Enron's bets went bad. But they were funded with Enron's own stock. The company had insured itself against catastrophe with a fire extinguisher made of paper. While the stock climbed, nobody noticed. The moment it fell, the protection would vanish, at the exact instant it was needed. And Fastow, for running these deals on the side, personally collected close to $45 million. By now, the accountants had signed off, the lawyers had signed off. The banks were collecting fees on deals dressed up as trades but built like loans. The analysts were cheering the stock higher. Every check on the company was being paid by it. So, what could possibly bring a machine like this to a stop? The one force nobody can pay off: gravity. Sooner or later, the stock had to stop going up. In August of 2000, Enron stock reached its all-time high, $90.75 a share. From the outside, the company had never looked stronger. The cracks, when they came fast. That August, chief executive Jeff Skilling did something startling. 6 months into the top job, he quit. Personal reasons, he said. The very next day, an executive named Sharon Watkins wrote an anonymous memo to founder Ken Lay, warning that the company might implode in a wave of accounting scandals. She was right. In October, Enron reported a loss of $618 million in a single quarter, just 3 months as the Raptors, that insurance built from Enron's own falling stock, collapsed and took the numbers down with them. After that, the dominoes barely paused. Regulators opened an investigation. Fastow was fired. Enron admitted it had claimed nearly $600 million in profits that were never real, going back 4 years. A rival company agreed to buy Enron, then looked closely at the books and backed out. And the agencies that grade how risky a company's debt is cut Enron's rating to the lowest level there is: junk. On December 2, 2001, the 7th largest company in America filed for bankruptcy. More than $63 billion in assets. The largest corporate collapse the country had ever seen. The stock that touched $90 was now worth 26 cents. But the moment this collapse stopped being avoidable came a full year before anyone shredded a page. Which brings us back to the man at the desk in New York. His name was Jim Chanos. He made his living betting that overpriced stocks would fall, companies he believed were worth far less than their price. In late 2000, he did what almost no one bothered to do. He read Enron's annual report, all of it, and instead of getting lost in the dazzling story, he asked one plain question: how much does this company actually earn on the money it puts to work? He did the arithmetic, about 7% before taxes. 7 cents of profit for every dollar, from a company the market was treating like the future itself. Strip away the magic and the most innovative business in America was earning barely more than it cost to keep the lights on. Chanos bet against the stock. Then he did one more thing. He handed the puzzle to a young reporter at Fortune magazine named Bethany McLean. She called Enron and asked the same unglamorous question: how exactly does Enron make its money? Skilling told her the question was unethical and hung up. Her article ran in March of 2001. The headline was a question too: is Enron overpriced? 9 months later, there was no Enron left to overprice. That's the part that lingers. The lie was never truly hidden. It was filled with regulators and printed in a report year after year for anyone willing to do the math. The crime wasn't that it was invisible, it was that almost no one wanted to look. The reckoning, when it came, was uneven. Jeff Skilling was convicted on 19 counts, sentenced to 24 years, later cut to 14, and released in 2019. Ken Lay was convicted on every charge against him, then died of a heart attack before sentencing. Because the law never got to finish with him, a judge erased the conviction. In the eyes of the law, Ken Lay died an innocent man. And Arthur Andersen, the firm with the shredder, was convicted of obstruction of justice for destroying those documents. 3 years later, the Supreme Court overturned it, 9 votes to 0, a complete vindication, and a useless one. The firm was already gone, and some 85,000 people worldwide had lost their jobs while the appeal crawled upward. One last detail: when Enron's belongings were auctioned off, the company's famous crooked letter E, the tilted logo from the lobby, sold for $44,000. Whoever bought it got the most honest thing Enron ever made, a symbol that had been leaning over the whole time. Which brings us to the reading on the compass. Enron is usually told as a story about a handful of brilliant liars. We think that misses the point. And worse, it lets everyone else off the hook. A fraud this enormous cannot survive on lying alone. It survives on permission. Think about who was in that room. The accountants who were supposed to check the books were paid by Enron. The banks that built the hiding places earned rich fees. The one analyst who refused to recommend the stock was quietly pushed out. The regulators had waved the accounting through back in 1992. Every guardrail built to stop a company like this was being paid by the company it was meant to watch. That's the pattern we keep finding, story after story. The fraud is rarely the strange part. The strange part is how ordinary it looked from the inside, and how many decent-seeming people had a quiet reason not to ask the obvious question. Remember that fake trading floor? Real employees tapping at dead keyboards to impress a visitor? That wasn't a stunt. That was the whole company in one room. And the shredding we started with, the trunks of paper, the 30,000 deleted files, that was never the crime. That was the receipt. Proof that the people inside knew exactly what they'd signed their names to. Do you think there should have been more accountability for those involved? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoy digging into the stories that the world tries to hide, subscribe and leave a like.